Tonight, tariffs, no ifs or buts. A nervous world awaits exact details of what will come tomorrow on President Trump's Liberation Day.
Those days of America, beginning tomorrow, being ripped off are over. American workers and businesses will be put first under President Trump.
As hopes fade of UK exemptions and MPs hear a worst-case scenario, the Prime Minister says businesses don't want him rushing to hit back.
They want most is a calm and collected response to this, not a knee-jerk response.
With America's friends and foes alike in the economic firing line, I'll ask former CIA Chief Leon Panetta how far alliances can be tested. Also ahead, shock, fear, sleeping out in the open. We hear from inside Mandalay, the city closest to Myanmar's earthquake epicenter.
Most of them are sleeping outside because of the afraid of the collapse of the building again, and there were several aftershocks even today.
The grieving father of a young paramedic allegedly killed by Israeli forces in Gaza calls for greater protection of emergency workers. Plus, the protesting US senator who's heading towards the record books tonight, 1 hour at a time. That's all ahead in the world with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. For weeks now, US President Donald Trump has circled 2nd of April as what he calls Liberation Day, when he'll impose an array of new tariffs that could upend the global trade system. Well, that's tomorrow, and we're still none the wiser on exactly what's coming. The word we keep hearing is reciprocal. In simple terms, President Trump wants tariffs on imported goods that match the levies other countries already place on American products. An unconfirmed number being reported is 20%. Well, what impact could that have on the UK? Well, Professor David Miles from the Office for Budget Responsibility laid out one scenario to MPs. Just have a listen.
If tariffs at 20–25% were put on the UK and maintained for 5 years, our assessment of what that does is that it will knock out all the headroom that the government currently has.
So a bit of a worst-case scenario there, leaving the government with no financial wriggle room. But the Prime Minister thinks there is still space to do a deal.
I'm talking to the sectors most impacted, and I think what they want most is a calm and collected response to this, not a knee-jerk response. We are, of course, negotiating an economic deal which will, I hope, deal and mitigate the tariffs.
So while President Trump is leaving it to his Liberation Day to reveal the particulars, the tariffs themselves are hardly a surprise. Just take a look at how campaign rhetoric became policy.
I think it's more beautiful than love. The word tariff, it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
I will immediately begin the overhaul of our trade system to protect American workers and families. Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich other countries, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. Tariffs are going to make us rich as hell. For Mexico and China, we're talking about approximately 25%. The European Union it's an atrocity. Canada's very tough. Canada is very, we're not treated well by Canada. But I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them. No more, no less. It's a very powerful weapon that politicians haven't used because they were either dishonest, stupid, or paid off in some other form. We have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd. Many countries have taken advantage of us, the likes of which nobody even thought was possible. The tariffs, I told you, most beautiful word in the dictionary.
So without a crystal ball to see into the future, is there anything that history can teach us about what could happen next? Our economics and data editor Ed Conway explains the tipping point that could prove particularly costly.
We are in the build-up to Liberation Day. April the 2nd, Donald Trump says there's going to be the biggest moment for tariffs. And in the meantime, all sorts of things are happening in the global economy as people adjust towards what might happen with tariffs. Take gold. This is just showing you how much gold is leaving the UK, the vaults in London, and going to the US. And it's been relatively low for all this time, going back to 2005. Look at what happened after the election. Look at that line. And we've never seen anything like this at all. An extraordinary exodus of gold from the UK to the US. Again, because people are trying to work out what's going to happen next. So what will happen next? Well, no one knows. No one knows. A lot of people in the White House don't seem to know. They don't know what the level of tariffs are going to be. They don't know which countries are going to be faced by them. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has talked about a dirty 15 countries which are going to be faced with these tariffs. But who are the dirty 15? Again, we don't know. This is a guess, OK? But it's the best guess that's out there right now, which says the top 15 nations that have trade surpluses with the US, so you've got China, the EU, Mexico, Vietnam, all the way down there to South Africa, that they're the dirty 15. But again, no one knows, because maybe you're not just treating the EU as a region, maybe you're splitting it up, in which case it looks slightly different. You've got Ireland and Germany there, but the constituent parts of the dirty 15 are different. No one knows. What we do know right now is that these are the level of tariffs, or at least this is where they were before Donald Trump came in this presidency. That line there is showing you it's 48%. It's the level at which you're talking about Cold War-style trade barriers. So that is almost like a ceiling. Here's what happened in the first few weeks of Donald Trump's presidency. First of all, he threatened Mexico and Canada with tariffs. Then they were rescinded. Then he imposed, and these did actually get imposed, 10% on China, then another 10% on China, taking it up kind of close to that level. And now we need to find out what's going to happen on Liberation Day. If it's going to be tariffs on those dirty 15, here's how things look. So all of those bars, say for the UK and France, go up. China goes beyond that level, that Cold War-style trade barrier level. And for the time being, the UK and France seem to get off. But that may not be the case, because it may be that there are blanket tariffs imposed on everyone. Maybe it's 20%, maybe it happens gradually. We just don't know. But what we do know is that will have an impact. And in fact, in a sense, it's already having an impact, because the threat of these trade barriers mean that people are pulling stuff into the US. I showed you gold a moment ago. This is showing you the overall trade deficit in the US. And this is precisely the line that Donald Trump wants to get up as the US imports less stuff from overseas. What's happened to that line so far? It's gone down. In fact, it's gone down to a totally unprecedented level because people are sucking all of those goods into the US ahead of the imposition of tariffs. It's just one of many side effects that are happening right now in the global economy.
Our Ed Conway. Well, let's go straight to Mark Stone, who joins us from the White House. And Mark, I mean, the world is bracing itself for these tariffs and waiting to see how big and how far Donald Trump is likely to go. But we were just showing our viewers on the programme a little while ago all the things that he'd said about tariffs and these trade wars throughout the campaign trail. I mean, frankly, nothing he said then, frankly, should then come as a total surprise as he sort of lays this out.
Yeah, of course. I think everyone expected that tariffs would, as he said so many times, be front and centre of his policy agenda. But the details we still don't know. But what we do know, what we have seen over the course of, 74 days now, is that he's using tariffs in different ways. Sometimes they're revenue generators, sometimes they're punishment, sometimes they're on, then they're paused, then they're off. So it's very hard for anyone to really gauge quite what he'll do. And I think that gets to the heart of it. As Ed was saying there, no one knows. It's not just us. It's the diplomats representing governments around the world, diplomats based here who have been in and out of the White House and the adjacent buildings, trying to talk to as many people from within the administration as they can on behalf of their own governments, on behalf of their own countries, to try and to make things easier for them, to try and find avenues to do a deal, to do a Trump deal. But at the moment, he doesn't appear to be prepared to do those deals. I think what he wants to do, what Trump wants to do, is is to assert control, to assert authority, global authority, and say, look, I'm going to look after America first, and I'm going to put in place these tariffs because I believe that they will, over time, make America great again, bring back industry to America, make sure that products are made in America. That might all sound great, and the whole concept of a level playing field. If you tariff us, then we're going to tariff you. It kind of makes sense in simple terms, but when you drill down, it's so much more nuanced than that, because, you know, over time, different countries have made their industries quite specific to different sectors. So it's such a massive ecosystem that to put in place tariffs overnight, tariffs that we still don't know the details of, it will have a massive short and medium-term impact, not only for those countries who are tariffed, and we don't yet know if it's blanket or not, but of course for the American consumer as well. As I've been saying all day, you only need to go into a branch of Walmart here in America to see that pretty much everything is made outside America, and so naturally it's going to cost more, and that is going to impact the American consumer. And that was the focus of the questioning here at the briefing today. What if Donald Trump might just have got this wrong? Have a listen.
He said that the president right now is with the trade and tariff team. They are very confident that this is all going to work. But what if they're wrong?
They're not going to be wrong. It is going to work. And the president has a brilliant team of advisors who have been studying these issues for decades. And we are focused on restoring the golden age of America and making America a manufacturing superpower. And again, Peter, I would point you to the investments that have already trickled into this country. And the president hasn't even made his tariff announcement yet tomorrow. There have been billions of dollars in private investments from around the world pouring into American communities.
So a clear reflection there of the view of the White House. Trust Donald Trump. Don't bet against him. He will be right. Well, we will see. I think we should see, Yalda, Liberation Day, as they're calling it, as not the end point, but as a starting point. Because Donald Trump, as I say, will want to make this his day, exert control, show the American people that he is in control. He's calling the shots. And then from there, over the days and weeks ahead, we will see countries around the world continue to try to form their own carve-outs and reduce whatever these tariffs might be to a much lower level. And for Britain, as it is with so many other countries, they are doing all they can with their teams here in Washington to find carve-outs, to find bones that they can throw to Donald Trump, to be able to try and find some sort of deal. And you know, Keir Starmer's right when he told Beth Rigby earlier on today that the conversation has moved much faster than it would normally. Donald Trump has forced the issue. And so where you might expect trade talks to take months or years, actually they're talking about things much more quickly now. It's just that they haven't got to any sort of conclusion. So I would look at over the coming days for areas where Britain will find ways to try and appeal to Donald Trump. Perhaps they can offer some sort of a lower trading arrangement on something like American cars. At the moment, we're aligned with Brussels on cars, so American cars coming into the UK are tariffed at 10%. Donald Trump says that's ridiculous, so maybe they will look at lowering the tariffs there. There is the digital economy. At the moment, that's taxed. Maybe it can be taxed less, but that would have implications. So you can see all sorts of different areas where they are trying as quickly as they can to relieve the stinging impact that these tariffs will, in the short term, have for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, we still don't know. We'll find out more tomorrow, of course, in this so-called Liberation Day. In the meantime, Mark, right now, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is staging a protest on the Senate floor. He's held the Senate floor for, I believe, sort of since yesterday, 20 hours now, and says that he is going to continue to talk about the fact that Donald Trump, this administration, they are a threat to democracy. And he has said, I'm going to talk for as long as I am physically able. Let's just have a little listen. As I said, he's well beyond his 20th hour now. I think the record for this is something like 24 hours and 18 minutes, which was set in 1957. But let's have a listen to Cory Booker.
Still, the sudden deterioration in the outlook is striking, especially because it is almost entirely a result of Mr. Trump's policies and the resulting uncertainty. Tariffs and the inevitable retaliation from trading partners will increase prices and slow down growth. Federal jobs cut will push up unemployment and could lead government employees and contractors to pull back on spending while they wait to learn their fate. Deportations could drive up costs for industries like construction and hospitality and the agricultural sector that depend on immigrant labor. In quotes, if the economy was starting...
Mark, I mean, quite an extraordinary protest there. As I said, he's well into his 20th hour now, and I've been seeing some of his colleagues trying to ask very long questions to just give him a moment of just, pause to gather his thoughts again. But he said he's going to go on for as long as possible.
Yeah, and fortuitous that we dipped into him in this long speech at a moment where he was in fact talking about tariffs and the impact that he believes they will have on the American economy. This is extraordinary stuff. Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey, a well-respected senator in the Democratic Party. I can't even speak for a few minutes. I don't know how he's doing it for quite so long. What he's effectively doing, Yalda, is holding up proceedings in the Senate. He is adopting a mechanism by which he can hold the floor if he can continue talking for as long as possible. And it is quite remarkable. He began at 7 p.m. last night. I tuned in at about 11 p.m. last night to see that he was still talking. I wondered then how long he would go on for. He said in the early hours of this speech, "I rise with the intention of disrupting the normal business of the United States Senate for as long as I am physically able. I rise tonight because I sincerely believe that our country is in crisis. Just 71 days in, the President of the United States has inflicted so much harm on American safety, financial stability, the core foundations of our democracy." That, he said, about 17 hours ago. I can tell you that in about 4 minutes' time, he will have overtaken Ted Cruz, who back in 2013 spoke for 21 hours and 19 minutes. If he manages to speak for 24 hours and 19 minutes, then he will have the record, because, as you say, it was back in 1957, protesting civil rights, that Senator Storm Thurmond spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes. At the moment that he leaves that podium and stops speaking, he loses the floor. So he needs to keep going. He can stop if other people to help him out on the floor rise to speak for a few moments. That gives him a chance to have a glass of water. He can't eat. He can't go to the loo, because if he leaves the podium, then he loses the floor. It's an extraordinary effort that he is making to demonstrate what he believes is a country in a deep crisis.
Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on everything that is happening on the other side of the Atlantic. Well, I'm joined this evening by former US Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on the programme. We're looking there at images of Senator Cory Booker holding the Senate floor. We're hearing about this Liberation Day tomorrow in the United States. Can allies, partners of the United States still bet on America? I mean, I guess the big question is, what on earth is going on in terms of what this administration is doing, what the Democratic Party is doing, and where America is at this moment?
Well, it's as you're observing, the country is in a great deal of turmoil right now. A lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty about the direction of policy, the impact that it'll all have on our economy, the concerns about how Washington is governing or not governing in the middle of a crisis. And so I can understand Cory Booker's frustration. He's doing essentially what we used to call a filibuster, although it doesn't follow filibuster rules. But he's basically taking the floor to basically describe a lot of the concerns that I think Americans are feeling right now in terms of the future of our country.
Yeah, and in terms of, the split in the transatlantic alliance that we're seeing these sort of tariffs that are going to be unleashed on both friends and foes tomorrow. There really is no differentiating between who the alliances and the allies of the United States and those who've in the past been seen as adversaries.
Yeah, look, I'm someone that believes deeply in America as a world leader and following what we've had for 80 years since World War II, which is whether it's Republican or Democratic presidents, both of them, with the exception of Trump, have largely supported America as a world leader, have supporting our alliances in the world. I think it's incredibly important right now with a very dangerous world. Problems with Russia, problems with China, problems with Iran, North Korea, terrorism, that we have to build alliances in the world in order to make the world more secure. And lastly, that we have to stand for democratic values, the right of people to be able to self-govern and to enjoy the freedom and the rights that are part of democracy. Unfortunately, this administration doesn't believe in those principles. And I think as a result of that, we have created a lot of credibility problems with our allies abroad, with our partners, with the international trading community. Look, this is a global world. This isn't the world of McKinley around 1900s. This is a global world.
Certainly how Donald Trump is currently, sort of behaving. I had someone who was a former national security advisor to the Australian government, the Conservative government in Australia, on this program last night. And he said that one of the mistakes that European allies are making is that they're treating Donald Trump like he's an idiot or a simpleton, and that you have to, whether you like it or not, take seriously what he is saying. Do you think that's the right approach here? Because Europeans have been queuing up to make their way to Donald Trump and try and explain to him, for example, the threat that Russia poses. And yet we see out of the Defense Department these leaked memos from Pete Hegseth, for example, coming out saying Europe should know that it cannot rely on us, that we are shifting our focus to China and we won't be there for our European allies should Russia mobilize.
Well, I think that it's very important for the leadership in Europe to be able to come together and to develop an approach that makes clear to Washington that Europe is going to stand together no matter what, whether it's facing tariffs or whether it's facing security threats from Putin or whether it's facing economic issues from the United States, that ultimately Europe does have to stand together and to bring those concerns, very frankly, to the attention of the president. I do believe that the responsibility now is not to suddenly just stand back and do nothing. I think what Europe has to do is to come together as a delegation and make clear to the president that what he's doing is incredibly harming relationships with our allies, incredibly harming the partnership that we've had since World War II, not only on security, but also with regards to our economy. So, yes, this is a moment for Europe and European leadership to come together, strengthen its position, strengthen its security, and make clear to the United States that if we are interested in a world that will be more peaceful in the future, it will require a partnership between the United States and Europe working together. That's what NATO is all about. And very frankly, the United States should stand with NATO.
I've just got a minute left, Mr. Panetta, but I wanted to quickly ask you about this idea coming from Donald Trump that, you know, he might seek a third term. Do you think, I mean, it's unconstitutional, but is that, do you think, on the cards for the United States now?
You know what? One thing we've gotten accustomed to with Donald Trump is diversion. He'll always use some kind of diversion to get the attention of the press. And right now, the United States is in a period where our markets are falling, where there's great concern about inflation, where there's great concern about the consequences of these tariffs, where there's great concern about whether or not we're going to be going into a recession as a result of these policies. That is what Americans are really concerned about. And what the administration is trying to do, what Donald Trump is trying to do, is to somehow divert attention to that by saying that he's going to do something which is blatantly unconstitutional, which is to run for a third term. So I'm not concerned by what he's saying. I'm more concerned about the state of our economy right now.
Mr. Panetta, really great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Lots more coming up on the programme. We hear the reality on the ground from inside Mandalay, the city closest to Myanmar's earthquake epicenter.
In the last 5 years, more than 13,000 farmers have left agriculture in the UK.
Is it going to be viable for the future?
No farmers, no food!
The frustration, the anger, the fact that so many of them are at risk of going bust has now become too much.
You've got to keep hope because one day it's going to be okay.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
It's scary what's happening in the country.
It's the illegal migrants that we don't want here.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
Having the police speak to us so starkly right in the middle of the riot showed just how serious the situation was. The water on board the barge contaminated with Legionella bacteria, an outbreak that was first revealed by Sky News.
There have been questions for months over whether the support offered to asylum seekers on the Bivvy is sufficient.
A cruel place to put human beings.
From busy cities to rural communities, we spend every day reporting on how big decisions impact real people. The last smoke and steam rises into the sky above Blast Furnace 4.
Today is a day in history in Talbot.
The closure means more than 2,000 job losses.
It just seems madness.
It is a highly contagious infection. South West Water did apologise again.
This is the Revenge Porn Helpline.
They're helping terrified victims.
You've been a victim of a very common type of online crime known as sextortion.
We're making things better for people.
Stonehenge became the latest victim of Just Stop Oil.
Now I can say I've been to the orange Stonehenge.
Sky News, get the full story first, free, wherever you get your news.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
We're rolling.
Welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
Well, let's go to Myanmar now, where the window to find survivors of the powerful earthquake is closing as the known death toll climbs towards 3,000. One of many factors stopping aid is the country's long civil war. And today, a rebel alliance said it would pause its attacks on the government. Well, earlier we made contact with Dr. Minn, the head of World Vision Myanmar. He's in Mandalay, the closest city to the epicenter.
We arrived this evening, so we just had a chance to go to only some part of the city, and we saw the aftermath of the earthquake. But we will go for details tomorrow. So I can just explain to you what we saw on the trip from Yangon to Mandalay.
Yeah, just give us a sense of it, because we can see and we understand that the death toll continues to rise, and perhaps, the country, given the political state of the country, is not ready to do this alone. They need international help.
Yeah, I think there's a three-phase that for this earthquake response. The first phase will be the rescue. But for that rescue phase, NGO like us could not do because we do not have capacity, as well as we do not have the equipment to do so. So currently, the government is organizing that with external assistance, especially from the expert from China to be here. So when I arrived Mandalay this evening, I saw some of the vehicle going for the rescue effort. So we saw a few vehicles, but we don't know where they are going and whether they have rescued anyone, or we don't know what the ambulances carry. So we saw this is the first time when I arrived in the Mandalay city.
Just give us a sense of the roads and access to some of these places, because some communities are now completely cut off from the world.
Yeah, the road access are very sketchy. So even when we came from Yangon to Mandalay, we have around 3 detours to go, and it took like twice the amount of duration that we have to come. And during that time, there were also a lot of vehicles on the street, not because of the traffic, but it's because of the road condition is not good that they have to, in some area, we have to go slow. But in the city, we saw regular traffic, but we also saw many buildings damaged and some building collapsed. And the damaged building, you cannot see the damage right away, but when only you get there and see it from the near, you can see the cracks in the building, which is very much unsafe to stay. So even now this evening, we saw many people sitting outside the building, not inside the building, and on the street and on the plain area that we were told that most of them are sleeping outside because of afraid of the collapse of the building again. And there were several aftershocks even today. We encountered 2 or 3 aftershocks today.
Do people have access to food and, just some kind of shelter? Obviously, they don't want to be indoors because, as you say, aftershocks, and they're worried about the safety of the buildings. But do they have access to basic things?
It seemed like some of them already had the basic thing. It's not because that the many organizations coming to give to them, but I see that local people are helping themselves. So this evening, I saw one corner, people were cooking rice and dishes, and then they distributed to the people nearby. So it's a local effort. They're helping each other. And I think I haven't seen big organization distributing any relief aid there. But probably because we are very late, I arrived around like 6 p.m. So it's maybe the activities might have stopped. So tomorrow I will know for sure, because tomorrow we also have our staff also doing distribution and all that. So yeah, because we came late tonight and then we could not see it, many things.
Yeah, from what we understand, many people have been left homeless and lives shattered. Devastating situation there in Myanmar. Dr. Minn, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
That was the head of World Vision, Dr. Minn, speaking to me there from Mandalay, close to the epicenter of the quake. This is The World. Still ahead tonight, a grieving father tells of the heartbreaking twist of fate that led to his paramedic son being shot and killed in Gaza.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Welcome back. The father of a paramedic who's said to have been killed by Israeli troops is calling for better protection for health workers in Gaza. Last week, 15 staff members from the Red Crescent Civil Defense and the UN were killed and later discovered in a mass grave. The IDF denies targeting them intentionally. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports from Jerusalem.
10 days ago, emergency workers from the Palestinian Red Crescent and the Gaza Civil Defence Force were on their way to help injured colleagues near Rafah when their 5 ambulances and 1 fire engine were targeted by the IDF. It was 5 days later before the IDF allowed the UN access to the area to search for the 15 missing medical workers.
We tried as the AVs to advance 50 meters to the front to see the wounded woman.
As they were on their way, Palestinians were fleeing southern Gaza, and one of the UN vehicles witnessed a man being shot as he crossed the road ahead.
Another one shot.
Buried on the sand, bulldozer.
The bodies of the Red Crescent and UN workers were eventually found, buried under sand in a mass grave. One is still missing. They were all wearing their uniforms.
بالأمس بالفعل وصلنا إلى مكان الجريمة وتم انتشال.
We arrived at the scene of the crime to retrieve the bodies and found that all of them had been shot directly in the upper part of their bodies and buried. The ambulances were also destroyed and buried.
Some of the dead Red Crescent workers were buried yesterday, on the day that Muslims celebrated Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan. But the holy month in Gaza has been marked by a resumption of Israeli fighting and daily funerals.
Allahu Akbar!
Mohammed al-Hillah was one of the paramedics who was killed. His father is also an emergency responder, and it was only down to fate that he wasn't there.
It was supposed to be me, you know. I was on duty that night, but fell ill and sent him in my place. We need protection from the international community. We need protection for medical teams. We are medics, soldiers of duty, not armed fighters. We carry out humanitarian work. If I see someone who needs medical attention, I'm obligated to serve them.
The IDF has denied killing innocent medical workers and said that Israeli forces opened fire on suspicious vehicles that were travelling without coordination and in an active combat zone. We have asked the IDF why the bodies were found in a mass grave, but have received no comment. In the past 24 hours, the IDF issued an evacuation order for all of the Rafah area. Once again, tens of thousands of Gazans are fleeing for safety, carrying everything they can. Israel said it would only negotiate with Hamas under fire from now on, and they are pressing ahead with that, and with the full support of President Trump. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Well, in Khan Yunis, Gaza tonight is Liz Allcock, head of humanitarian protection at the charity Medical Aid for Palestinians. Thanks very much for joining us here on the programme. I just want to get your reaction to fellow aid workers in Gaza being killed in this way, and then also the response from the IDF. They say that they thought that it was a suspicious vehicle, that they were Hamas operatives.
Well, this is yet another example of the deliberate targeting of healthcare workers and first responders in Gaza, totaling obviously more than 1,000 healthcare workers and over 400 aid workers over the last 17 months. For us, this is the latest in a long line of incidents that point to a consistent pattern of deliberate targeting of healthcare workers, a systematic dismantling of the healthcare sector. People who are carrying out their work, still in their uniforms, in clearly marked vehicles, many with their medical gloves still on in their PPE. It might amount to a crime of extermination, and yet this continues. Just as an example, a few hours ago, we had to evacuate our own clinic, which, because of the Israeli bombings just 100 meters away, we were warned of an attack and we evacuated, but were given 5 minutes before the bombs started falling. Had it not been for the heroic actions of the healthcare staff quickly getting people to relative safety, I may be sitting here telling you an entirely different story. We have many, many incidents and evidence of atrocity crimes in health facilities and deliberate targeting of healthcare workers, both in the field and inside health facilities, that we do believe points to a systematic, deliberate, knowing and clear violation of the rules of war.
I mean, and for the past 15 months, we've seen hospitals targeted. As you say, healthcare workers have been targeted. And the response from the IDF has consistently been, you know, in the fog of war, in this environment where they feel under attack by Hamas. That has been the reason behind it. What do you, I mean, I know you say that you feel that's a deliberate targeting of health workers, but to what end? What is the purpose of targeting health workers, medics, those trying to get to the scene to rescue other people?
I mean, that's a very good question, and I would point that question in the direction of the Israeli military, and not to me. I've frankly given up trying to work out the rationale of the Israeli military during the course of this horrific 17 months. But what I can say is, even if Israel has belief that there is any military activity going on in health facilities, they have the obligation, not the option, but the obligation to minimize civilian casualties. And I think the killing of over 50,000 people, 70% of which are women and children across the entirety of the Gaza Strip, really points to an utter, total, clear and knowing disregard for the sanctity of human life and the preservation and protection of the lives of civilians.
Liz, I just in the last few minutes also saw a report that's come in where the Israeli government says there is sufficient aid going in to Gaza. The UN has described that as ridiculous. Just give us a sense of the state of play in terms of the aid. You're there in Khan Yunis at the moment, the level of aid that's managing to get in, because this has consistently also been part of the issue of the last 15, 17 months about the amount of food that is able to get into the Strip.
There's been no entry of humanitarian aid or commercial goods since, I believe, the 1st or 2nd of March. So we're now at the 1st of April, so almost a month with absolutely nothing coming in at all. We have no medical supplies. We have no medicine, no equipment. There is no fuel. There is no cooking gas for people to cook on. People are chopping up their furniture to burn as fuel wood to be able to cook on. There is no water because there's no electricity or no fuel to fuel the desalination plants and the water pumping stations. There's also no food. The bakeries across Gaza have ceased operating. There are no bakeries, which is the most basic form of subsistence that people have here. And there is about a week's worth of ready-to-eat food on the local market at extortionate prices. Some items have risen by about 4,000% since the ceasefire broke a few weeks ago. I can tell you from first-hand experience, there is nothing coming into Gaza. There is nothing available on the local market, and people are starving.
Liz, we're so grateful that you've joined us here on the programme. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up, with hopes of peace in Sudan, we'll examine the growing documentation showing how women and children have been targeted during the war.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
I want to start the programme today with an aim, a story that I can't get out of my head. The campaign has now started.
This is your chance. Tell people.
This is the Politics Hub. It's not correct. The tax burden is projected to go up.
No, I am talking about...
No, but I'm not. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous. No one does care about us. I'm really interested in that. On the Politics Hub, we like to push the boundaries. He's got the majority. The question is, what is he going to do with it?
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club.
4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. Sudan's almost 2-year conflict is synonymous with mass sexual violence, which has been widely documented as a weapon of war. UNHCR says it's rife in conflict zones and on asylum routes, and a lack of funding is hampering its response. Well, with me is the Sudanese activist and writer, also director of grassroots women initiative SIHA Network, Hala Al-Karib. Thank you so much, Hala, for joining us here on the programme. I just want you to first give me an assessment of the last 2 years, the horrors that have been inflicted on the Sudanese people, on the women of Sudan as well.
Women are the centre of this war, Yalda. You know, this war, it evolves around the violations against women, around using women's bodies as a weapon of war and as a war strategy. So women has been, subjected to all kinds of torture, all forms of violence, primarily conflict-related sexual violence across the country. And, children as well has been exposed to enormous amount of violence and sexual violence as well.
And we know that the military has pushed out the RSF forces from parts of the capital, Khartoum, but the horrors for people and women, it hasn't ended.
Absolutely. The military has pushed the RSF out of Al Jazeera state and parts of northern Blue Nile states and parts of Khartoum. However, the situation is still extremely volatile. And, people, the infrastructure has totally destroyed, and people, they have nothing to come back to. So, and the insecurities is still prevailing across, central Sudan. So we can't say that the situation is safe 100% for civilians to return.
For the women of Sudan who have, as you say, gone through unimaginable horrors, do they feel let down by not just their own government, but by the international community and women's organizations globally, where they haven't managed to give a lot of attention and time to this issue.
Sudan is one of the most neglected crises in the world, you know, and the lack of acknowledgement of what Sudanese women and Sudanese civilians are enduring is quite horrific. This war has been happening for the past 2 years. I think the number of people who were killed, it amounts to hundreds of thousands of people. The number of women who were raped, it can reach up to 100, you know, over hundreds of thousands. You know, my organizations alone has documented, you know, over 350 cases, and we have, those are confirmed cases. There is, again, more than 500 cases that have not been confirmed. And we believe that the number is way higher than this. The sexual violence has been used in a systemic way, door to door in certain locations. Women are struggling with access to sexual and reproductive health services. Women are struggling with mental health, access to mental health services. And there is no support that's in place at this point in time and throughout the past 2 years.
Yeah, a really horrifying situation. We've continued to cover Sudan as much as possible through our correspondent, Yusra Al-Bagir. But Hala, we're so grateful for you joining us here on the programme.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Well, that's it from me and the team here on The World. The news at 10 is next. Good night.